Let's roll.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the Craft Brews and Fantasy News podcast. I am Brewboy813, leading the charge today as we cover the 2020 NFL Draft that just took place recently, a couple days ago, and we're going to do some recaps for you, give you some of our takes on who we thought did well, and touch base on the Steelers, and of course, the Packers. We can't wait to get into that news. Find out how Ben and Matt are surviving over there. But without further ado, I'm joined by an awesome cast of people. Ben, how you doing today?
Doing good, man.
Awesome. Matt, how you feeling?
I'm hanging in there right now.
Okay. And of course, Corey.
Good as always, my friend.
As we do with every show, folks, we try to pay some tribute to the craft beer industry. I know Ben sometimes has some wine, but did you guys bring anything to the table today to share real quick before we jump into the cast?
I am drinking Tampa Bay Brewing Company's Quat. It's a seasonal fruit ale. It's the first time I'm having it, and I'm guessing they're local kumquats. I believe up in Brooksville is where they come from.
Brooksville, Dade City, something like that. Yep.
Yeah, or Dade City. Yeah, but they're good. So very tasty.
That is a tasty beverage. Matt, what about you? You drinking on anything today? Did we lose Matt?
I think we may have. Well, he's back.
Well, I'm back here. I don't know if you're asking me next or not, but
Yes. Yeah, you're up.
drinking a Nectar Ale. It's a limited release from New Glarus here. Just came out a little while ago. It's really good.
What's that like? I've never heard of New Glarus. What's that beer
So-
tasting like?
Yeah, so it's actually very fruity. It's fruit of grapes, and it's it says it's sweet nuances of Bavarian heritage grapes harvested in New York and paired with a malted barley wheat beer. So
Wow,
That sounds good.
that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Send some down to Tampa. And of course, Ben, bringing anything to the table today?
Yeah, I got another bloody. It's a little stronger.
Little more gin in that, Mary.
That's his recovery cocktail.
There you go. He's recovering from Thursday night.
I did drink some toasted lager for Thursday night.
Oh, I like the toasted lager.
That's always
And,
been a personal favorite of mine.
It actually, I mean, for a lager, it was awesome.
Mhm.
Enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for sharing, guys. And I got to give a special shout out to my buddy Corey there for picking this one up for me. I am sipping on the barrel-aged Narwhal from Sierra Nevada. Narwhal in general is one of my favorite stouts. So right off the bat, you know I love it. But they came out with their barrel-aged Imperial Stout from Sierra Nevada, and it's absolutely incredible. Comes in at 12%. So if I don't make it to the end of the podcast, you'll know why.
What do you compare it to, Ryan? Before we get in, kick this draft coverage off. What do you compare it to?
I would say it's a milder barrel-aged tuna poo.
Ooh, okay.
So if you
All
could
right.
picture, barrel-aged,
board.
yeah, it's a milder. Doesn't have that heavy body that the Hunapoo does, but it's every bit as drinkable and just fantastic. It's a fantastic beer across the board.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, all right, boys, let's jump into this. Let's go ahead and cover the first round of the draft. Any surprise picks by any teams, any surprise trades that you want to talk about? Let's just dive into it, do a light brush over, and then we'll get into the Steelers and the Packers news. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
You want to start with the good or the bad?
Let's start with the good and then finish with the bad, because that's always better.
Honestly, I thought the top 9 was chalk outside of Thomas going forward, but I think that was a good pick for the Giants.
A lot of people were surprised about that. Even Joe from my buddy Joe from O'Brien's was just like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, but Corey will be the first one to tell you they're a running team. That dude's a mauler. I mean, as far as the run block, he's it.
Yep.
And
I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. I think Cleveland getting Wills was a dream for them.
Yeah, because I expected. We talked about the way they drafted in previous years. They did a better job last year, but the way, well, I would say last couple years beyond Baker Mayfield, The way they picked Wills over Becton, I was expecting them to take Becton the whole way. I was impressed. When they took Wills, they said, wow, there's chalk that one up for a win. And then, of course, Becton to the Jets, totally makes sense there. But, it was a pretty uneventful first half of that draft. I thought the total opposite.
Yep, I'm not surprised at where guys went necessarily, but I'm surprised at the lack of movement at the top half of the first round.
Yeah.
I think from what I've heard, there were a lot of phone calls made. I know teams Atlanta was trying to get up to number 2, which was telling me they were going to trying to get Chase Young.
Well, I mean, they really had no other form of communication besides phone calls.
Yeah. Detroit,
as a
Miami
joke.
were trying to. Detroit, Miami were trying to swap there. There was some other stuff too, like Falcons trying to come up to Arizona at 8. But at the end of the day, there was probably just some low ball offers, and nobody was biting. So,
yeah, I thought. Sorry, I was looking something up. So please, let me. If I'm repeating something you guys already said. I thought Buccaneers, for Wirfs to fall into their lap, they didn't have. But I get it. I mean, he was the dream. He's got left and right side versatility. I'd prefer not to talk about the Niners. I just don't want to talk about it. But for them to walk away with Kinlaw and Ayuk is absolutely stupid.
Well,
roster in the NFL.
They killed it. Niners and Bucks both killed it. I think talk about a couple teams that really plugged their team with a bunch of good veterans, and they didn't have very many holes, and they took care of business.
Talking about the Niners real quick, did I read correctly, and maybe this was just late night reading, I don't know, but did I read that they traded Breida to Miami?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was going on with that? I mean, I thought he was a good fit there. I mean, he seemed to be playing pretty well. Any insight on that after the draft?
I mean, he didn't play in the playoffs, right? You guys are going to have to help me with the names right now, but I mean they had the dude who ran
Mostert took over.
Yeah, Mostert, and I mean they had running backs. So honestly, to get some value out of Breida probably made sense. I mean, you can only have so many.
Well, they had Jeff Wilson they used. They had Tevin Coleman they used. And then what's his name, who they gave a contract to a few years ago, is finally healthy, McKinnon. And his upside, yeah, it makes sense. But who was my favorite out of the whole backfield personally was Breida. So, yeah, it's interesting. And then I would have to say the only surprise pick to me, and I'm not calling this a bad pick by any means because CeeDee Lamb's a player. I didn't expect him to be there, so it is hard to pass up on him. But maybe you guys can play devil's advocate or disagree with me, but I don't see him making that offense better with Dak Prescott at quarterback. I guess you can say, okay, you can't cover Cooper.
Yeah, I guess
double cover Cooper.
You're not going to get worse with CeeDee Lamb. He immediately. The versatility they have with their wide receivers is stupid now. Just think about losing Randall Cobb, gaining CeeDee Lamb. That's not even close. So, although I don't know how they're going to do it,
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. So, I want to talk about. I thought for starters, the Falcons, they reached on Terrell. I didn't lose tape, but I thought that was a major reach. They were desperate for corner. The trade to happen with Jacksonville at 9. But even that's fine. But I had like 4 or 5 guys ahead of Terrell. So that's just my opinion. Next, the worst pick of the first round was Raiders. They could have got Damon Arnett in arguably round 3. I don't know what they love about that kid, but I thought that was a major reach.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'd add Seattle to that list too. They had a couple of goofy picks. I thought there was a lot more talent on the board. They passed on Queen and took Jordan Brooks.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little later. My grades. I only gave 4 bad grades.
Yeah. Philly was goofy. I love the Rieger pick personally. I didn't like Jacksonville's Chasen pick right there whatsoever. I just don't like him as a player in general. But they already drafted what's his name early on last year, who's a player. But that team's just they have so many holes though. So
Yeah, I don't
I'm
love.
surprised. I'm surprised they didn't take Love right there.
I loved what Minnesota did too.
Yeah, so Minnesota was one of I had two teams with A grades. Minnesota was one of them.
Yeah, not even just over the year.
Absolutely killed this draft. They walked away with a better quarterback room than they've ever had, and they've had some good rooms.
Well,
so
yeah, Kansas City talk about a perfect pick to put the icing on a cake of that offense, huh?
Yeah.
He's such a good fit for what they do. He can block. They wanted someone who could. Already got the runner. What's his face?
What's his face?
Right.
So,
Damian Williams, or not Damian Williams? Damian Williams.
Damian Williams.
That's pretty good coverage of the first round there, guys. One pick I think affected two members of the cast. Pick 26, Jordan Love to the Green Bay Packers. I want to go ahead and just rip right into that and find out what your reaction was, because I know we've done a couple of mock drafts over the last few weeks. You guys were thinking other players, other needs to build around Rodgers. You guys get the news. What's your first reaction? What do you do? Did you break your TVs? Did you do something else? Like, what happened? Tell me about it.
I'll let you go first, Matt.
Well, I immediately had about 3 brandy sevens. Tried to nerves a little bit, but instant gut reaction was I really didn't like the pick. I mean, nothing against the kid. Maybe he's going to be good, but I don't see him helping the Packers in 2020 or 2021. And when you got a team that's a game away from the Super Bowl and has multiple glaring holes on the roster, with an aging quarterback that you just paid the highest paid QB in history, and he's only in the second year on the deal. I don't know. Not the route I would have gone.
Tell me how you really feel, Matt.
So,
I mean, I was furious. I will tell you, I think a little differently now than I did on Thursday. But as far as my gut reaction, to take him is one thing, which I disagree with either way. But to trade up 4 spots, to give up your 4th round pick, again with the team that was in the championship last year, and we have holes, and how valuable that 4th round pick is. Maybe someone jumps up and takes him. But so go to the next guy on your board. Don't trade up 4 spots for a quarterback. It essentially, we wasted our 1st and 4th round pick in this year's draft. And if Love ends up great, that's fine. I'll apologize later. But right now, I get what they're doing, but I don't agree with it at all.
Yeah, you're right. They didn't really have a need to do that, They needed to build other position plays, other skill positions around Rodgers. You guys were 1 game away from the Super Bowl last year.
Now, hold on, Corey. Before Corey jumps in, I'm gonna take the words out of his mouth here. We typically draft at the end of the 1st round. There's only going to be so many opportunities over the next couple of years to get somebody, so we're not going to end up the Bear or whoever, a team that can't find a quarterback. So, Corey, I'll let you get back into it. I get that. Rodgers said he wants to play into his 40s. He plays good football right now. He just doesn't have enough weapons. But we're going into year 2 of an offense that did pretty well for it being the first year. Go.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. I would actually be okay with that, very okay with that pick if you guys would have sat still and took him. By losing that 4th round pick, there was still some good receivers on the board, and I told you, my wife is a Packers fan, so I have the ticket. I have the Steelers and I have the Packers on every Sunday, right? So I watched all the games last year. You guys made the NFC Championship game. You needed another young, good receiver next to Adams, and it appears to me they must have a lot of faith in what's his name that you guys signed?
Fun.
Funches.
I don't.
But by doing that,
Brown, I guess, but we'll see.
So
you
so
pretty much
Ryan.
took that
Sorry.
off the board. But no, all I was saying is I get it because the point you made, it's very rare a quarterback like that might be around. And you have a second-year coach and a second-year GM, right? So I think that pretty much that was that decision. I think the third point of it is maybe they're thinking, wow, well, look at Rodgers' contract, and whenever quarterbacks are top-paid quarterbacks like that, it does take a lot of cap space away from the rest of your team. And look at a team like San Francisco, Baltimore, Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? So,
but to your
But
point
we're not-
earlier that you
But we're not going to be able to take advantage of that unless you get rid of Rodgers in 2 years? I mean,
2020 as an he keep exercising.
30.
well, but
I mean-
to Corey's point though, he would be okay with it if they wouldn't have traded up. I think you guys maybe would have been okay too if you wouldn't have traded up. Not Seattle didn't need a quarterback, Baltimore didn't need a quarterback, Tennessee didn't need a quarterback. You know, who'd they make the trade for?
They were afraid the Colts were going to jump up and
Over top and get him.
Ninja them. Yeah.
Well, still.
But I think that's what they were thinking.
So
I will say, once I don't know if we're getting into the Packers draft right now, but I will say we didn't have a receiver. I have some thoughts on that.
Let's get in. Let's go ahead. Let's dig in. Let's go.
So ultimately, we gained 3 offensive weapons in this draft. 2 of them are already on our roster before the draft. But what it essentially did is it opened up to use players in different ways and utilize their skill sets. DeGuara out of Cincinnati, H-back, fullback. They absolutely loved him. What he does is now Sternberger is our new Jimmy Graham. He is our pass-catching number 1 tight end, and we are going to throw to him a lot.
Yep.
You know how much I love the guy. When I think about it like that, round 3, yeah, it's a reach, but they loved him that much. He was one of the top-rated tight ends. So, our second weapon is Aaron Jones. By adding A.J. Dillon, you have an early down runner, and now we can use Jones in the slot. We can use him wherever we want. The dude will basically be able to be creative with Aaron Jones, where he's another weapon, both as a receiver and a runner and doing reverses, and I think that's going to allow us to do a lot of really cool things. And then third being Dillon. Let's not sit here and pretend like Dillon's not a great running back. The dude is big. For his size, his quickness, the way he shoots through the line, I mean, it's so smooth and so quick. We don't have a guy like that. And you also see LaFleur in the past. We pick up Patrick Taylor as a UDFA and A.J. Dillon. Both those guys are monsters. They're huge dudes. So not only are we giving ourselves an option if we don't want to pay Jones, but we're going to use all 3 of those running backs. Jamal Williams will be able to block, and catch passes sometimes. Jones will be more of a weapon. Dillon is going to be our early down running back. So I like it.
I do like him. Between the A and the B gap, you hit it hard, and he has enough speed to hit the second level very well. And plus, I personally think it gives you a running game in the red zone that is much more effective than what you have had.
So I apologize if this has already been said. I'm cutting out a little bit over here, but I think it also we're going to be Tennessee North now. That's really what our offense is going to transition into, that power run game too. They've already said they want to use Cabrera as this Kyle Juszczyk role. So I think it's going to be a blend of Tennessee's power run game, like the variety that Shanahan has in San Fran. We're going to have 3 running backs that might even be on the field at all times together. So it'll be interesting.
That's exactly what I'm picturing from this draft myself.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me jumping in one more time here.
Go for it. This is your time.
I've been stressing a number 2 receiver forever, but I think maybe I wasn't understanding LaFleur's scheme. So we have big dudes.
Where did LaFleur come from? I can't remember. Where did he come
He
from?
was Tennessee's offensive coordinator.
Okay.
But he's also been with Shanahan in the past. So.
Okay. Well, there you go.
And brother on Shanahan's staff right now.
Yeah, his big thing is run the ball and play action. So we're going to play action even more. We are going to run, play action. So Rodgers will still have good numbers. Difference is we're going to scheme guys open. So I guess maybe I was thinking too much. I wanted this number 2 who could burn, but it doesn't sound like we're going to be doing much classic Packers offensive football. This is a new thing. So Rodgers isn't going to stand back there and run for his life and make plays. Everything's going to be calculated. So with that said, we do have a deep room. I think we're missing that one skill set, but with those 3 weapons I talked about, with Funchess, MVS, we're getting St. Brown off of injury. We still have a top 5 receiver in the league, in my opinion, in Devontae Adams. Now, if I think about it that way, I'm kind of like, okay, I could get behind this. I think there's something to what they did here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think St. Brown is that one guy who could potentially be a difference maker for him. The one thing I will say is, who knows what would have happened, but I think when San Fran jumped us to get Ayuk, that's when we made the decision to take that. So.
I think he was our target.
Yeah. And I think they knew it.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, you guys got your quarterback of the future, and then pretty much the rest of the draft. You know what? To your point, though, Ben, even if you don't, you have some trade bait there in the future. But we won't go down that rabbit hole now.
Well, I mean, we're assuming he's good. I mean, I'm not saying he's Jamarcus or anything, but let's see him on the field.
Right.
Yep. It'd be high to take you.
But
I wish,
especially in this system that you're looking to deploy a little harder this year and next year, which I personally love. I wish Pittsburgh would do more of this. We don't play action. It's absolutely stupid that you don't play action in the NFL, in my opinion. So I love what you're doing. It was very confusing to me at first because nobody expected it. Everybody expected running back, wide receiver, linebacker somewhere early, right? Because that's like your obvious things to replace. But if you look at this draft, I love your later part of the draft rounds. You're both all your 3rd round picks. I thought you guys killed it. I mean, 3 very good offensive linemen.
We did really well. I think Kamal Martin is a thumper. So we bring in Kirksey. We really don't like Warren Burks or Bolton. We've already talked about that. So you bring in a guy who will help you against the run. He's a big dude, gets the hole fast. He hits people, right? But he's not going to cover, and that's what you have Kirksey for. So you have Kirksey on 3rd downs for the speed and the coverage. Getting Runyon, Hansen, and Stepaniak, I thought that was the highlight of the entire draft for me. Also told Matt.
I think more than anything, it's a clear indicator that Lindsley's gone. Lane Taylor's probably not going to make the team, and they can now spend that money in other places. So
exactly. So I loved what they did. Runyon will compete day one for the right tackle job, but he doesn't have to take it. But we got competition there. Hansen's our starting center next year, and Stepaniak, I really think. I don't know if he's ready to play a lot this year, but you guys know how much I've loved this guy. He pancakes dudes. He's in the Big Ten and he throws guys around. He's not really consistent, but with some coaches, he's someone who could turn into someone really special. So he could be. You could see with Runyon and Stepaniak, 2 years that would be the starting right side of our offensive line.
Yeah, and if they get it 6th round, I'll take those cheap contracts today. So
they obviously thought that's where the value was, and I don't disagree. I like all those guys. Vernon Scott and Garvin, it's a 7th round. Like, they become something great. If not, who cares? Scott is kind of a bigger safety, potentially like a hybrid role, and then Garvin's obviously will compete at DN, potentially outside linebacker. So
he's only 22.
Garvin?
Yeah, he's young.
Yeah, and I watched some of his highlights. I mean, it's quick around the edge.
7th round flyer. He's another one of those guys with the relative athletic score that's super high. I ended up Look at that. Dylan is through the roof, obviously, because he's 6 feet tall, 247 pounds, and had like a 41-inch vert. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. So, I'm personally a fan of your draft. I would give it a B myself. As we sit today, my question is, what do you guys grade it? And then also, how would you have improved the draft in your opinion? I'll give my real quick opinion. So I'd give you guys a B. I really like what you did. The one thing that I think would have made it an A is if Jordan Love was still your pick at 30, and you still had your 4th round pick to add a receiver to that list, what you're seeing right now, I think would have been a pretty damn good draft.
Yeah, I think it's too easy to say, well, if we don't take Love, we take a in there. I mean, the whole thing changes. I agree with Corey. Jordan Love's fine. I like the prospect, whatever. Giving up the 4th sucked. I think there was serious value in 4 that we missed out on. So before I answer the question, Corey, we did get Stanford Samuels as a UDFA, and that's one guy Matt loves. And all I know is he's long, corner out of Florida State.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Insurance policy. That's what I think, man. He ran a 4/40, and that's what knocked him out of the draft. But the ball skills are there. He's long. He plays that slot. He can play that tall slot corner sometimes.
Yeah,
I like that.
And then we got Patrick Taylor, who people thought was a 5th round pick.
Yep.
He's 6'3", 230 out of Memphis. So now we got 2 Derrick Henry clones with up offensive line, a new badass fullback. I'm excited, and I know I'm always an optimist, but
you have to be. You either buy in or what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I see the vision, and I think, and this is what I would love for Pittsburgh, and I think they're doing it maybe not as aggressively because we don't have a new coach and a new GM kind of second year, but they're not doing it as aggressively, but we're doing some things slowly. We'll talk about that soon, but bring things back to where maybe they, it's a little closer to Rodgers' scheme or what he had maybe a little bit early. And it's never going to be McCarthy's scheme, but give the guy a great offensive line and people that can knock some people around and run the ball, and then just take your shots. And that's what I envision you guys kind of doing a little more instead of Rodgers trying to improvise so much and just throwing some Hail Marys up.
So we're sick of people beating on us. I think what the Niners do is they run over people. They have a good defense, that's fine, but they just run through people. And they come from the same tree. They run the same offense. That's what we're trying to do here, is we are trying to run the ball, and we're trying to play action to we're gonna basically every play is gonna see the weakness on the defense, and there's gonna be your looks are basically everything is calculated with the floor. And this scheme is different to me. I'm used to Rodgers going into the spread, running around, and Jordy catching it 60 yards down the field. Those days are done. But as a whole, I give the Packers a C. I give them a C, only because we don't know what it's going to look like yet, and I think we pass on a lot of value. I think to give it anything higher than a C is, although we see the vision, I need to actually see it. On all these picks, right? So, if Jordan Love is garbage, if he's the next Brett Hundley, no, I'm not going to be. Yeah, I can't give you higher than the C until I find out, because you essentially gave away our 1st and 4th round pick. If he ends up our future quarterback, then I'll eat my words, and believe me, I'll buy his jersey. But I'm not ready right now. I think it was dumb.
So you're saying you'll spread the love at some point in time?
I gave the Packers the 4th worst grade in the NFL with this draft. Now, am I excited about the draft? Yes. I just think we reached on everyone compared to the rankings, and I just think we missed out on a lot of good value just trying to hand pick the guys we like. And I think when you do that, it's fine if it works, but don't get cute. I'm sorry, Gutekunst, but You're not Belichick yet. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
So what do you think, Matt?
So I couldn't have said it or summarized my thoughts any more precise than that. I'm right on with it. I'm a C as well with it, with the caveat that, I mean, Love's obviously the X factor. 3 years from now, if he's a top 10, hopefully he's still on the bench at that point. But if Rodgers opts out and this guy's the next guy, I'll sign me up every day and twice on Sunday for this. My problem with it is again, it goes back to us being a game away from the Super Bowl, and I don't think the 2020 Green Bay Packers got better, and I don't even necessarily know if the 21 Green Bay Packers got better. When you see teams like Minnesota, Dallas, San Fran, New Orleans, all top NFC kind of loading up here in this class, it feels like it's obviously too early to tell, but I'm not going to buy into the fact that we got a lot better here immediately. So,
hey, can I ask you a quick question? Who makes more money, Lane Taylor or Billy?
Ooh.
Do you know?
I think it's Billy Turner.
Because I think Lane Taylor's a better guard than Billy Turner. Is there any scenario? Is the cap hit too high on that?
Too high on Turner. Yeah, the dead money would be worse on Turner because there's 2 years left on the deal before they can get out of the money.
Don't be so. With everything said here, let's not. We're probably going to re-sign Tramon Williams, I would imagine.
Into
which he won't play as big a role, I don't think, with a healthy Raven Green and now with a coverage linebacker. I think we're going to get a little more creative, but you re-sign him, and we will make a move for one more receiver somehow, some way. Maybe it's
there's still free agents. There's still free agents out there, and there's still teams willing to deal some guys. I mean, hell,
Carolina said Samuels was on the
Samuels. I wouldn't put it past. I mean, AJ Green might be a little bit happier now, but I wouldn't put it past AJ Green still wanting out. That might be a little too rich for your Green Bay's blood for a 2. But you can find somebody, man. And before we get into Pittsburgh, because that's a good point of mine. But I wanted to make a point where, with your draft class, the 3 guys that I love that I think are going to be long-term Packers from that class are Dillon, Stepaniak, and Runyon. I can picture those 3. Those are my favorite 3 picks of yours, being Packers for a long time. And I have a bold prediction. I think Dillon could possibly be the best running back Green Bay's had in a very long time.
I do love his tape. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't get excited when we drafted him because I love the player.
He was my second favorite back behind Taylor.
Yeah,
personally. But I like the old school.
Yeah, for what they're trying to do, you can't. He's built for that. So that power run game. That's really what we're.
Picture that outside zone. You run him at the guard, and that hole opens up right between Bakhtiari and Jenkins. That dude's gone, and I want to see who's going to try to get in his way. He is an early down runner for us. Aaron Jones is a phenomenal running back. I don't know if anyone. I don't think we want him to be a 3-down back. He is going to be better utilized as a receiver as that weapon. I would not be shocked if we get hyper creative with Aaron Jones this year.
Well, I think that Dillon pick showed me that they don't want him being a 3-down back.
Well, and we'll see what this Patrick Taylor thing is all about, but I don't think. I mean, if you take Taylor, there's a reason.
You think just depth, maybe just a pure backup to Dillon?
Well, I don't think he makes it to your practice squad. So that makes me just wonder: are we going to carry 4 running backs on the roster? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about Taylor. He looks so much like Henry, and Dillon reminds me so much of Henry. LaFleur very successful with Henry, so I think there's a reason we went and got him.
Anything to add before we kick off Pittsburgh's review?
Oh, I want to say one more thing. Matt, was it you that brought up Taylor Gabriel?
I did not, but I would love that.
He's cheap, and he fills that need. Although he's not great, I think he fills what we're missing. If he would give us 35 catches this year, that's a win. So that's a really cheap option we may look at because he's still out there.
Yeah, I would sign off on that all day.
I mean, don't beat me up if you hate this opinion, but there's a guy who's been pretty injury prone, but when he's actually 100% healthy and has actually good quarterback play, he's been decent. Is Marquise Lee? I'm pretty sure he's still a free agent right now.
He'll be more expensive though.
You think?
I think Marquise Lee is definitely more. He was on a. What did he make? I mean, he got a second contract. What was he making? 8?
I don't know.
I just
I'm
think you
not
can
sure.
get Taylor Gabriel for 1 year, $2 million. I mean, I just think that's just add him to the room.
Yeah.
It cut out for me. Did you say Marquise Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I thought he got moved.
He was either not re-signed or cut or released or something.
Maybe that's
Yeah, they released him.
I haven't heard of a re-signing yet, and I was always a fan personally of the kid, but he's had some major setbacks injury wise. But when he is 100% and on the field, and actually has had good quarterback play, which has been very rare in his career in Jacksonville. He's been a half decent player, man. You know, I think he's good enough that he deserves a roster spot somewhere. That's all.
Well, and he's that of what I want in a Packer receiver. I want kind of one of those quick twitch slot guys. So
he won't drop any passes. He has sure hands.
One last quick comment, and then we can roll, Ryan.
I was just gonna say, what's the last wrap up there on the Packers 2020 draft? Go ahead, go for it.
If anyone, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, okay? Aaron Rodgers is the most competitive player I've ever seen in my life. You trade a quarterback, he'll be okay with it, but you're going to see the best version of Aaron Rodgers this year.
You think it's going to light a fire? You think it's going to light a fire under his ass, if you will?
Aaron Rodgers is going to be – that's just who he is. This is going to light a huge fire.
Well, can I tell you? I mean, if just put yourself in that position. I wouldn't be upset because you second year coach, second year GM. He was in that situation, okay. But yeah, I would want to make sure that I'm playing my best football, not because I'm worried, but because I want to see that motherfucker get moved, just like Garoppolo did in New England under Brady. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Well, see, and I don't even think Rodgers cares, and he knows he's better.
No.
I mean, there's no Jordan Love will never be as good as Aaron Rodgers.
No,
he just won't.
The only reason, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, the only reason Aaron Rodgers will ever get traded, let's say 3 years from now, is because simply salary cap. That's it. But I don't see it. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
And there's another side to this too. I mean, if Jordan Love is your future quarterback, he gets to, be under the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers for at least 2 to 3 seasons. So there's a positive to that if he is your future quarterback. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is much more, willing to teach and lead a lot more than Favre was, I would think. We've had a lot of quarterbacks.
He's seen both sides of it.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard is
DeShone Kaiser had a chance to learn. Brett Hundley had a chance to learn. They didn't.
Well, that's what I've heard is Rodgers won't go out of his way to do it, which why should anybody? But apparently Favre was pretty much an asshole to him, and he's not going to do. When you go through something like that, you're not going to do that to somebody else. So
no, I mean,
this might be another topic for another day, but I still feel like Brett Favre got pushed out for Aaron Rodgers to take over. So that's my opinion.
Well, I think if Favre wouldn't have retired and tried to come back 2 times, it would never come. We couldn't trust him. I mean, that's why we loved Rodgers. But if Favre was like, "I'm coming back," we'd have let him come back.
Yep.
I really believe that. But who knows? I mean, because Rodgers had an additional year.
Wow.
Well,
It was the best thing that ever happened to you guys. So
Yeah.
let
I mean,
that.
you guys have had what Favre came to you guys in 92 after leaving Atlanta in 91. So 92 to 2020, you guys have had what 28
Decades,
years of great quarterback play where other teams like the Browns have been through like 15 starting quarterbacks all drafted in the first round. I mean, you guys are blessed. So maybe the Packers did something that we can't see
Rare.
yet, and we don't know. Maybe you guys don't know.
It's very rare. Most teams go very dark when their franchise quarterback's done. And let's just say you guys get lucky enough to win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, and you do move on from him, and Love is your guy, and you're still a playoff team at that point. You can't ask for more.
Yep.
You know.
100%.
I can't argue that. Again, if you don't give up the fourth, I'm not really that upset right now. I'm a little upset, not a lot.
It all comes down to the fourth. Well, thank you guys for your insight on the Green Bay Packers draft. Obviously, we want to carry on that conversation, but we're going to transfer gears here. And I just wanted to go ahead and point out, Ben, a couple weeks ago, you actually had our number one draft pick. Well, I guess not first round draft pick, but Chase Claypool. You had picked him number 62 as a wide receiver, but the Steelers ended up with him. So, Corey, let's go ahead and shift gears when you get a chance. And let's talk about the Steelers 2020 draft. And, guys, chime in. Feel free to have conversation. I know you followed everything that went on. So, Corey, let's go ahead and take it over.
All right. So, pick 49, Chase Claypool. Should have went with my gut the whole time. I believe they did have Jonathan Taylor on their board above him. They did really look into running backs at that pick. They didn't look into wide receivers heavily. It was basically Rager and Claypool. But there was reports early on that they loved Claypool, and that's the way they went. I like the pick. There was a couple guys that were still on the board that you can say that value would have been a better value pick, like AJ Epinesa. I mean, I don't know how the hell he made it to Buffalo in the second round. But again, we have Tuitt and Hayward locked up for a while, so it's like, okay, there are ends in a 3-4 system for the most part whenever we run our 3-4 base. I think what they did with this draft, when I take a step back and you look at it, they kept it simple. Granted, Big Ben was hurt last year, and we were awful on offense. But we were terrible across the middle of the field, barely threw any passes over the middle of the field. We weren't very physical over the middle of the field. And we were second to last, I believe, in red zone efficiency. Well, what Chase Claypool gives you is a 6'5" guy who runs in the 4.4s. Big body, can box guys out in the red zone. He's a red zone threat, and then he can be physical over the middle of the field as well. Also, he's probably, if not one of the best, if not the best, blocking receiver in this draft, and I think that kind of put him over the edge for Pittsburgh. And then, I hate to say it, but AB burned them so bad that when I watched all these guys' interviews, and I know Ben probably did the same with their picks, is these guys are so clean character-wise. So I think that had a lot to do with it too. So he's an exciting player that I think can add some value to our offense year one. So, there was a couple guys we could have maybe went with, again, an Epinesa. You can argue, I believe Chin was still on the board, but we have our two starters. So again, I think it was a good pick. The one guy my friend was really wanting to pull for, a Steeler fan, was Mims. Which is Mims' ceiling higher than Claypool, probably, but Claypool adds a lot more different value, is like pretty much everything I said. And he's willing to block. He's willing to play special teams. Mims never did any of that. So
Claypool is a Steeler, man.
Yeah, that's.
And he's tough. He can block. He has tight end versatility, and who knows? Ebron gets hurt, and old McDonald, gets hurt. Well, you're gonna need somebody to start them.
I simply love the fact that we have a wide receiver that is 6'4", 6'5", 200, and we'll call it 40 pounds. I've always felt, at least in the last couple of years, I've always felt like we haven't had a tall target. I mean, Bryant, yes, but kind of unreliable hands. You know, he was a speed demon down the field. He did catch a lot of good passes, but at the same time, unreliable. And he wasn't as physical as what Chase Claypool seems to bring to the table. So from that perspective, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like Ben's got like 3 targets to throw to. You got Claypool, you got Ebron, you got McDonald, all over 6'2", 6'3", 240 some odd pounds. So I love it from a physicality standpoint. Like I've always felt, even going up against the Ravens just seem jacked up on the field. We have more skill set, I think, than the Ravens. When we play them, but it always looks like they're more physical, they're more beefed up. We have got more speed, but they've got more physicality. So I think this kind of sets the edge a little bit better. And like Corey was saying, will give us opportunity to open up the middle of the field. So we've got more diversity with our play calling and our run game. I think this opens up the run game tremendously.
Yeah, just real quick before we move on from this pick, just like Ben said, he's a Steeler through and through, and they kept it simple this draft. I think they looked at what they were weak at, not necessarily value, like they normally do with their top couple picks. Not saying Chase wasn't a good value, but I think they figured he might help us this coming year the most out of anybody left on the board. Ben's got to be pretty thrilled. So. But moving on to pick 3, my personal favorite.
Big Ben. Just to clarify for all the listeners out there.
Whenever we, personally, in my opinion, I was very high on this kid. Still raw, small school, but the 3rd round pick, Alex Highsmith out of Charlotte, he's an edge guy. When we look back on this draft in 3-4 years, I believe he might be the highlight of it. So he. Personally, I thought he was probably the 2nd or 3rd best pure edge rusher in the draft as a stand-up outside linebacker. So you have your Chase Young. I don't like Jason whatsoever from LSU. You had a handful of guys like Taylor and Lewis and an A dropped, which is pretty wild. Nobody saw an A dropping that far. You have Bone, not real sure where Bone's going, inside or outside. Bone I'd probably put 2. But I'd probably put Highsmith right behind him. So he's got a lot of bend. He's a taller guy. I believe that pick he's going to replace Bud Dupree after this. We tagged Bud Dupree this year. I don't think we can afford to give him a deal after this year. So I think that's going to be our replacement. And after the draft, hearing Colbert and Tomlin talk, they didn't rule out. They're not going to redshirt him this year, so he's probably going to get into the mix a little bit. So that pick excites me. I love what I see from him. He's got the bend, he's got the speed, he's got a little swim move. If he can add some bull rush to him, he's going to be lethal.
You guys also brought in someone like T.J. Watt, who's a phenomenal leader and motivator. Those Watt boys, one thing they do well is motivate their teammates.
He's the alpha male.
I don't know what Dupree's like, but bringing in a young guy who's raw but has that talent, having someone like TJ to show him the ropes, I think that was a great pick.
And exactly. And after the draft, I like to watch these kids and the phone calls and their reactions and everything. Fun fact about Highsmith is he was a Steelers fan since he was born, and so was his family. So he had a Steelers hat with some fuzzy yellow stuff around the brim, and that's pretty cool to see. So he's got to be loving life right now.
I honestly think the guy's going to be a monster. Like I can't wait to see him dress up in the black and gold. To be honest with you, I think he's going to be just stellar to watch. I think he's going to fit our defense perfectly, and it's just going to be a fun time. And he's going to help us keep teams under 20 points a game, to be honest with you. I'd be scared to face him, to be perfectly honest.
Well, he's one of those kids. If he didn't play at Charlotte and he played at Alabama or LSU, he'd be a first-round pick. Easy. So a lot of people are just scared to take those smaller school guys. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does.
So let's talk. Let's go ahead and talk about our fourth round pick here. You know, we talked about it a couple of times. Weren't too sure if we take a running back, but kind of figured maybe they take one around this time or maybe a little bit later. But you know, what do you think about Anthony McFarland Jr. out of Maryland?
So this was the curveball to me of our draft. From what I saw, you know, we have Connor. While he's been not very healthy for a full season the last 2 years, but when he's on the field, he produces. You know, and then we took Snell last year in the fourth round as depth, and we kind of mixed him in last year. He played well. We took Jalen Samuels in the fourth round 2 years ago. You know, I was, in my opinion, we were either going to go running back at 49 in the second round, or we weren't going to go running back at all. I didn't feel like it was going to help our team. You know, what this kid brings, though, I did watch his tape. He's that one cut, hits the hole gone kind of kid. He runs a 4.4.
He's a burner.
Yeah, he's a burner. You know how Colin loves his Maryland guys. We took 2 in this draft. So what we did lack at running the ball last year in offense, it was speed. And this kid does bring speed. So the pick was surprising to me. I don't say I hate it. But I hope he can produce and help our team this year. You know, so we'll see. To me, this pick might pretty much put Jalen Samuels in the dirt, though. So, and then
that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
My second favorite pick, probably the whole draft, is I knew they loved Kevin Dotson, and I knew we were doing all these mocks, and I would always look for him in the 6th and 7th round, but he was never there. So with not having a 5th round pick, they had to take him here with our 2nd, 4th round pick, and they got him. So he to me might be one of the best, if not the best, pure run blocking guards in this draft. Again, smaller school, Louisiana Lafayette. Apparently had a monster 2018. Had a little banged up last year, but still did well. Does need to improve his pass blocking. But as a run blocker, that's exciting because what we did lack at last year on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line was our run blocking definitely declined. So he might potentially have a shot to actually start year one in replace of Ramon Foster retiring. So I can picture that pick being a long-term Steeler right there. I think that's kind of like the Stefanski pick Green Bay had.
Stepaniak, Corey.
Stepaniak, I'm sorry.
Stefanski. It's the Stefanski, bro.
Stefanski guy.
Oh man, that's fantastic.
Well, let me.
I love how Ben's just like, it's Stefanski, not Stepaniak. Or wait, no, it's Stepaniak. Wait, now I'm confused. Wait, is it Stepaniak or Stefanski? I forgot.
Simon Stepaniak.
Okay, it's Stepaniak, not Stefanski.
I'm gonna get a custom Stefanski jersey once he picks it.
Oh man, that'd be fantastic. Yo, let's send Ben a jersey with Stefanski on the back. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no.
Chime in, Ben?
Yeah, so I agree with 100%, Corey. I think I graded you guys at B+, partially because I didn't really understand the McFarland pick, but I will tell you, Claypool, has the potential to be great, but I know that I look at Highsmith and I look at Dotson. I mean, Dotson, if he went to an SEC school, now I know it's easy to say that, right? Because the same competitions, but you watch the tape, and I just love watching guys that just
pancake people.
and this Dotson, I just think is such a perfect fit, and I think he could be a Steeler for the next 12 years. I mean, I'm not saying he's putting on a gold jacket or anything, but I really love that pick.
No, I like I said, I put that right there with Stepaniak.
I would put
with you guys. So
yeah, I mean, I think Dotson's a little more polished and stronger than Stepaniak, but they're the same kind of guard. You know,
They're both strong in the run game. I think they both need to improve their pass protection, but I don't think they were. I think they came from teams that ran more naturally. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool when you see a guy pancake somebody and then go look for another guy and throw him to the ground too.
But dude, he was running around. He's just like,
Yeah.
like there was one watch. He literally threw 3 guys to the ground.
For those of the people listening out there that couldn't see Ben just now, he was using the force inside of his house, just pushing people away. So, just had to clarify.
His computer's now in the other room. Yeah. So I love that pick. That's one of my favorite picks from our draft. And then we didn't have a 5th round pick. Next pick was Antone Brooks Jr. I didn't watch. I did the safeties in our little tape watching project, and he wasn't on the list. I was unfamiliar with him, but when I looked at the tape, I see it, but this one is a little confusing too. I just think our team, or our coaching staff, especially our new quarterback coach, was the coach from Maryland. So we're very familiar with these kids. Tomlin's kid goes to Maryland. It's like inevitable, especially with what's going on in the world right now. I think they were a little bit more comfort picks. Like Benjamin was still on the board at McFarland. Was that a better option? Possibly. But I think it was more of a comfort pick there. And then with Antone Brooks, our safety depth is pretty weak right now behind our starters. But what I saw, if you put on Brooks's tape, apparently they've been watching this kid for a couple years. He crushes dudes in the box. Granted, we have that kind of player from Edmonds. Is this a pure Edmonds backup pick? I don't know. Do they try to incorporate him somehow to maybe replace Barron in some sub-package play as like a linebacker? Because that's pretty much what he was lined up as, was a linebacker kind of safety hybrid. They never really asked him to do much coverage, and when it was basically to spy the quarterback. So we'll see how they use him. I mean, he might not be on the team in 3 years, or he could be a heck of a steal. He does have a very strong strength playing in the box, just nailing guys behind the line of scrimmage. I watched some tape yesterday against Texas. There's a play where they throw a screen, receiver catches it. They have another receiver next to him who's in front of him that tries to block him. Brooks crushes the one receiver, runs through him, and then gets the other receiver behind the line. It's pretty freaky.
So what you're saying with Antoine there is that this is more of a relationship pick, meaning they kind of maybe know him, they've been following him for years, but maybe from a coaching standpoint, taking a player that's got the physicality that we're looking for that position to groom and develop into something greater. I mean, think about him playing next to Minka. Learning from him, and then our coaching staff really just hammering the other perspective. Maybe that's how they'll look at this pick in a couple of years and then evaluate from there.
Yeah, it's a boom or bust pick. I'll tell you that. He's either not going to be on the team in 3 years, or this kid, they're going to figure out a way to get him on the field. So we'll see.
Excellent.
But it was definitely a comfort pick. What I expected here, if they were going to go safety at this point, with all the research I did at safety, it was Miles Dorn. But I think the comfort of, again, they were watching Brooks last year, and they said they would have taken him last year if he would have came out. So yeah, it is what it is.
So let's talk about our last pick, our defensive tackle here, Carlos Davis. What did you see from him? Was he even on the board? Like, I don't remember hearing his name. No, I mean, in our mock drafts and things like that, conversations we've had.
Well, it's an interesting pick because I remember talking with Ben. Ben had the homework of doing the defensive lineman. And do you remember, Ben? I mentioned I was watching Nebraska tape because who was I watching? It might have been a safety from Nebraska, and I knew one of the defensive linemen Ben was going to watch, and I said, "Hey, you got to watch this other kid too, because he's just as good, if not better." And it turns out they're brothers.
Yeah, they're twins.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm not a professional scout, and I know Khalil got drafted higher than Carlos, but I didn't even think it was close. I thought Carlos was way better. I thought Khalil Davis was like my had the second worst grade of the 25 defensive linemen I did. Carlos, I didn't do. He wasn't on my list, but I remember watching Khalil Davis and then looking up who this other guy was, and that's when I found out he was his brother. So,
yeah,
I think this here,
it's a depth pick.
It's depth. Maybe he becomes something. He's high motor. He didn't have. Neither of the guys had tons of strength. So what would happen is they had good anchor, and they were able to tackle guys 2-3 yards down the field. They were tackling sideways or from behind. They weren't. So as far as a nose, he has some potential. I think he needs to get stronger, but give him a couple years, there might be a chance.
That's what they talked about is he did play more of that nose role for Nebraska, and apparently he's a pretty big boy, and he ran a 4.8 at the combine.
Yeah,
it's pretty freaky. So, granted, I see the speed on tape, but I do see what Ben's saying about the lack of strength. We'll see. Anything after the fourth round, in my opinion, maybe fifth, sixth and seventh round are guys that you're picking for the potential upside, but also know that they might not be on your team in a few years. You just don't want them to make the undrafted free agents list where they can sign with anybody. So, that's a pretty late pick to take that. After the draft, Colbert and Tomlin were talking on, hey, how do you feel about your comfort of losing Hargraves, not really feeling that? And Hargraves played, 47% of snaps last year, and they pretty much dropped the dime on they're going to be playing even more sub-package football outside of the 3-4 base this year. So they mentioned something like 25%. So the need for that pure star nose tackle is probably just not a very high priority at the moment. And they got a couple guys they can switch in there. So overall, I would go with Ben at a B+. This is not a very sexy draft, but I wasn't expecting that either. They pretty much did the opposite of Green Bay. I love what Green Bay did. I gave Green Bay a B because I see what they're doing, and I love the vision. They're not getting boring. Where I think Pittsburgh knows with how well the defense played last year. I mean, they were wrecking people. If you go back and watch Seattle, San Francisco, and Baltimore, the first time they played Baltimore, it was 2-point games that we should have won, hands down, with terrible quarterback play. So Ben can stay healthy, and that defense can be the same defense. They pretty much they added a couple of small pieces, a little bit of speed at running back, and then I think Claypool that is going to be the guy that adds the most value year one this year. But I would love to see Dotson on the field, but it's not a guarantee.
I love it. I love the reviews. I love both teams' perspectives here. So,
one more thing before we move on.
I was just going to say, any last not any last words about the Steelers, but
Matt, are you still on?
Yep, I'm still here. It's just cutting in and out.
I know he's cutting in and out.
Matt's good. Matt's golden.
I would have asked Ben and Matt their grades, and Ben said B. I want to ask them maybe something they would have done differently. The only pick I would have done differently from what I'm seeing here, when you get to round 6 and 7, you can't really say you do anything differently. You know what I mean? They're kind of, that is what it is.
I can tell you.
Mine's McFarland. While I see the value he adds as a fast back, Kayvon Wallace was still on the board there. And that was a little weird for me to see him pass. And then also Roy. Brevion Roy was still on the board there. So that's the pick that shocked me. I hope it works out. I do see the value. They gave the team something they didn't have on offense, and that's what was weak last year. But there was a couple good players on the board there. You guys can go ahead.
Is it our turn now, or you want? Just kidding.
It's your turn. It's your turn.
I agree. What McFarland ends up being, I think there was. If I would have seen you guys go, maybe as I'm looking at your draft, I think you have 3 really good high floor guys with Claypool, Highsmith, and Dotson. Yeah, and if you took a Wallace, or even, I don't know why Benjamin dropped all the way to the 7th
round. Yeah.
But when I watched Benjamin's tape compared to McFarland, I just thought he gave you more he looked more like a Steelers running back. So I'm just curious if you guys need a kick returner, that might be secretly what you're trying to do here, because the dude is a burner. You can use him in different ways, but he doesn't really fit the Steeler mold. And then Carlos, again, in my opinion, Tyler Clark did not get drafted. If we never hear his name again, then joke's on me. But
I'm going to look him up right now. Who signed him? I'm sure somebody signed him already.
Well, Malcolm
You
Roach went to the
know who else did not get drafted? Thaddeus Moss.
God.
Corey texted me that the other day. He's like, yeah, your boy went undrafted. I'm like, oh, damn. But you know who picked him up as an undrafted free agent? The Washington Redskins. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, he's terrible. He deserves not to be signed. So, you know who got Tyler Clark is the Cincinnati Bengals, who I hate to say it, makes my skin crawl, but they had a fucking great draft.
It's not gonna be the last time you hear Tyler Clark's name. I can tell you that right now. And then Saints got Malcolm Roach, and you know how much I love Roach. Now he doesn't really fit a certain position, but leave it to the Saints. I mean, I think he's another guy. I think we'll hear his name again. But I wasn't super high on Carlos Davis, but for a 7th rounder, I think you saw enough there. You add some depth, maybe he becomes something. And I think you guys had a pretty good draft. I just push McFarland, but other than that, I think it was pretty solid.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I don't know if you guys said this earlier or not either, but looking at it initially, I was like, oh, they didn't have a ton of picks. That's why I wasn't necessarily as high on it. But then back in my head, you got to remind yourself that they got Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's still on a rookie deal. You can kind of pull that into the draft.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Add him to this list here, and all of a sudden,
that's pretty damn good. Yeah.
An A+. You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, last thought, and we'll move on to maybe talk about some teams that we thought had killer drafts, and then maybe teams who didn't have killer drafts. But I think Ben or Matt made a mention before. I don't see Claypool ever being our stud number 1 receiver, but I do see him potentially being a Steeler for a very long time, like a Hines Ward. I'm curious to see who's going to be our number 1, because I think Deontay Johnson has the highest ceiling of any receiver we have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I personally, he wants to hear this. I understand how good he was as a number 2, and maybe that helped Juju excel. But Juju as a number 1, I know a quarterback thrown to him, but I don't care. I just really was not impressed with Juju this year. I expected so much and got so little as a football fan. So I will be curious how he fits into this mix, and if he is someone you are going to pay.
That, I think, is why we took Claypool. Not to scare him, not to have a backup plan per se, but we took Juju in the 2nd round, 3 years ago? We took James Washington in the 2nd round 2 years ago. Then we took Deontay Johnson very early in the third round. I think it was late second or early third last year. So why would we take another receiver in the second round? One of those guys aren't getting paid. I would have to say it's probably James Washington. I think they're going to try to keep Juju at a lucrative deal. I don't think they're going to give him anything big. He does add a lot of value as far as he's a physical guy. He helps in the run game. He's sure-handed, but he's not going to take the top off the defense. He's not the best route runner in the game. He's just a straightforward good receiver. I think deserves to stay a Steeler, but I definitely don't overpay him. And if he doesn't want it, then a lot of people are gonna hate me to say this too, but then move on. And I think this Claypool pick kind of sets him up to be okay if that ends up happening, because he's the first guy you have to make a decision with as far as who you're paying in that wide receiver room.
Yep.
All right. So favorite drafts by teams. I know you mentioned Minnesota.
I got 3 for you.
Okay. I like the Saints too.
But you got to take that with a grain of salt, because they only had they had 3 and good for them. They didn't have a lot of picks. I mean, I think getting Bond where they did was good. I thought Ruiz was a good
Troutman.
And so that's the 3 I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could make the case for a lot of teams. What I'm going to do here is give you my 3, but I want to pull this one up so I can read you the picks. So a couple that I thought were good drafts, I don't have as my best, would be Dallas. I thought getting Biotish where they got him. I know he's not Travis Frederick, but they really hit it out of the park. They got Bradley and I in around 5, 6?
Why? Something's got to be up with that. There has to be, with what's going on. I don't think there's been a lot of media and a lot of intel on a lot of the players. There must be some kind of character concern with an eye, and then also Bone making it to the 3rd to New Orleans is kind of wacky too.
Yeah. Well,
he had a diluted
drug sample or his test. So there's a lot that had good drafts. I'm just going to top 3, okay? And Raiders are another one I thought had a pretty good draft as well, but they're not one of my 3. So
they ninja'd Muse, man. I was pissed. Yeah, so I told you guys, if you wanted Muse, you had to take him early, and I was.
Yeah.
And I was going to the linebacker too.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to put these in any order, but Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Michael Ajamudier, Lloyd Cushenberry, McTelvin Ajim, Albert O, Justin Strad, and Nutain Muti. Denver Broncos absolutely freaking killed this thing. In a division with the Chiefs, I thought the amount of firepower and speed the Broncos added, and love Ajim. I just thought they had a phenomenal draft. The Vikings, as I said, the Vikings got Gladney, Jefferson, Ezra Cleveland, Cameron Dantzler. So they got 2 starting corners with Dantzler and Gladney, and then they get Harrison Hand. And then I looked at their UDFAs, and they got A.J. Green out of Oklahoma State. So Minnesota they got Troy Dye in the late rounds. They got James Lynch, who reminds me of the guy with the handlebar mustache who all world in Minnesota. I can't remember.
Player of the year.
Doesn't Jefferson just look like a Minnesota Viking receiver too?
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty ugly. So yeah. so Broncos, Vikings, and then I thought the Philadelphia had possibly the best draft. Now, I understand if you want to talk about Jalen Hurts, that's fine. He does not even factor in what I'm about to say, but a team that needed someone to replace Malcolm Jenkins got Kayvon Wallace. That's an upgrade. That's incredible. You get Jalen Reagor. Davian Taylor out of Colorado has the upside to be as good as Queen or Murray. Jack Driscoll in the 4th, one of my favorites in the draft. John Hightower, more speed. Sean Bradley, really good inside linebacker from Temple. Then they get Quez Watkins, and they trade for Marquise Goodwin, and they got Prince Tega in the 6th. I hate that guy, but as a 6th round, me up all day long. He is a starting. I thought the Eagles killed it. I'm sure you guys want to talk about some other teams too, but yeah, I thought the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Broncos had really, really, really good drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pull a couple up here. I hate to say it, but the whole AFC North pretty much fucking murdered it.
Yeah, I love it, Baltimore.
Baltimore, I think they were able to come. I mean, to me, Baltimore has been the best drafting team in the NFL for a long time, and it sucks. It fucking sucks. But they don't have holes, so they were able to take best available, and that's what you get when you're able to do that. I guess a hole could have been Queen. So there you go. You filled a hole at 28 with potentially the best linebacker in the draft.
Right.
Then they get J.K. Dobbins. Do you need him? No. I mean, Lamar Jackson's just going to run all over you anyway. And then
he's Mark Ingram. I mean,
Ingram's getting older, but yeah, you take Dobbins. He's a home run hitter. Justin Metabike in the 3rd. People talked about him in the 2nd round. That's a great pick for defensive tackle. Devin Duvernay, wide receiver from Texas in the 3rd round.
That was a good pick.
That's giving them a burner. Yeah, giving them a burner. Malik Harrison, Ohio State linebacker.
Great value.
Ben Bredesen, guard from Michigan. They get James Proche from SMU in the 6th. And then Geno Stone in the 7th. I wasn't high on Geno Stone at safety, but in the 7th round is pretty crazy. I thought they did a bang-up job. Cincinnati probably, I think, might have had the best draft in the AFC North. You got Joe Burrow. You get your franchise quarterback. You got T. Higgins in the 2nd round. And then they have glaring holes at linebacker. You get Logan Wilson in the 3rd, and you get Akeem Davis-Gaither in the 4th. You got your 2 starting linebackers. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, that's pretty absurd. So they had a hell of a first half of the draft. And then Cleveland. I mean, they were smart enough to take Wills over Becton. I applaud them on that in the 1st round.
Yeah.
They take Delpit, which they need a safety, and that's going to be ugly for us to. I mean, if that guy's got some holes, as far as a tackler, but they're not going to ask him to do that. Hopefully, if they're smart and they just have him deep playing center field. They got him in the 2nd round. They got Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle from Missouri, in the 3rd round. That's a hell of a pick.
Jordan Elliott?
Yeah, they got him in the 3rd round, dude. And they got Harrison Bryant from Florida Atlantic in the 4th round. They already brought in really young, good receiving tight end. They brought in the Atlanta Falcons tight end. They signed him.
Hooper.
Yeah, they signed Austin Hooper. And then they got Devin Peoples-Jones in the 6th round. So yeah. While I like what the Steelers did, it's not sexy, and not having a 1st and a 5th, it's I might have to put us last on that list just because.
All right, I got 2 more quick ones, Corey, if that's all right. Were you going to another one?
No.
The Dolphins, you can make whatever argument you want about Tua over Herbert, but outside of taking Brandon Jones over Ashton Davis, I thought the Dolphins had a phenomenal draft. But I really like what the Chargers did. Chargers get Herbert, trade back in for Murray. They take Joshua Kelly, who's a good running back. They had Joe Reed and KJ Hill. Herbert has some weapons.
7 is crazy value in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that. And then Alohi Gilman, the safety out of Notre Dame. I can't tell you his strengths and weaknesses, but I know I did see him rated pretty high. And to get him in round 6, that just adds to the good secondary. So, and then they brought in what's his face, the corner from Denver, and you still got the one the Packers let get away, Hayward. And then with that front 7, man, I thought the Chargers definitely improved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their health is the top 3 defense. So
yeah, and I think Herbert starts day 1. I think all that was a smokescreen. They're not going to sit behind what's his face. He's gonna
Tyrod Taylor.
He's gonna win. He's gonna win the job, and
he's good enough to start day 1. Is his rookie year going to be phenomenal? No, but that's okay. You know, I think they're okay that they're not going to, burn him down. So, but yeah, I totally agree with that. Do you want to talk about some teams that I thought drafted poorly?
Really.
Who had an interesting? Oh, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I know we probably need to try to wrap this up, but I had four teams with sub B grades. I gave the Patriots a D because.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to talk about.
And then I have the Falcons, Seahawks, and the Packers as 3 teams that I had in the C range. Everyone else, I thought, with the talent in this draft, came out pretty. Patriots it doesn't make any sense. That's Belichick. I'm going to leave that alone. Seahawks are the same way. They always draft obscure players because they love them. And you know what? They keep making the playoffs. Packers in the playoffs. Falcons, I don't know if you're able to pull up the Falcons draft or I'll find it, but I had a lot of issues with what the Falcons did.
I got it here. A.J. Terrell at 16, Marlon Davidson at 47, Matt Hennessy at 78, Mykal Walker at 119. And a kicker.
Hennessy was her best pick.
Hennessy was her best pick, and Marlon Davidson had
good.
But the reaching for AJ Terrell, and maybe the joke's on me, but whoever got Christian Fulton in the second round, he was my second.
They replaced Conklin with Isaiah Wilson in the first and took Fulton in the second. I thought that was 2 very good picks.
Yeah.
I mean, Fulton is so good.
But let's talk about the Patriots. So that's exactly what I was going to talk about. So Kyle Duggar with the 5th pick in the second round. I'm not saying it's a bad pick, but there's some risk there. But I'm going to let that one slide. I can see that being a New England pick. Josh Uche, one of my least favorite players, he does not have a position, so they need to figure that out in the second round. Anthony Jennings, Alabama linebacker in the 3rd round. Whenever there was a couple really good guys like Akeem Gaither still on the board, and then they take with their other 3rd round picks 2 tight ends. So are they trying to copy what they did with Hernandez and Gronk? Maybe, but it's they're definitely not that good.
Dalton and Asiasi.
Yeah, they're okay. They're okay. But yeah, that's not it's not two guys to get too excited about. Definitely not getting the next Gronk or the next Hernandez with those guys. So, and then they took a kicker in the 5th, which hopefully he's a badass. I don't know anything about him. So,
yeah, out of Georgia Southern. Must be a family tie there. One last quick one. I liked what the Lions did. Unfortunately, another North team, but they got Akuda, DeAndre Swift, Julian Aquara. They got Jonah Jackson and Logan Stenberg back to back in round 3 and 4. That is 2 starting guards. So I don't know what their offensive line looks like, but that was awesome haul for them. And then they got Quentin Cephas in 5, which I think he's going to be somebody who is a lot more impactful.
Who was this? Detroit, right?
Yeah,
that's Detroit. Yeah.
Did you see?
Yeah. I
combine about Cephas. He said he's the best receiver he's gone up against all year. Kind of ironic that they end up together. So
yeah,
I read that. Yeah, the only thing I have to say on that is Okwara was one of my favorite upside picks right there. The guy's freaky athletic. Very raw, has a long way to go, but his ceiling's very high.
Yeah, Detroit was a team this past year that they got in a funk early. They almost beat the Packers, and they looked like a team that was potentially a playoff team, and they just completely went off the rails for whatever reason with Stafford getting hurt, a number of other stuff. But do not sleep on the Detroit Lions in 2020 if we're playing football, because they were a really good team the first 4 weeks of the season last year, and I don't know what happened, but adding Swift in your backfield and getting Akuda and so I think they added some really good pieces, and the Lions are two teams that I'm going to be keeping an eye on this year, as far as surprising some people.
Well, this is definitely. I was just going to say
third, even with the haul they made. I think Vikings are taking a step back.
Well, this has definitely been some amazing insight on the 2020 NFL Draft. Is there anything left to bring up before we talk about what we want to do moving forward? Obviously, we have fantasy football that we want to try to cover, and who you should draft for your fantasy football team. But is there anything else left on y'all's minds that you want to talk about real quick before we wrap this up?
I mean, I hope we have football in 2020. That's all I have to say. And, if we do in some capacity, whether it's with fans or without fans, I think we can. I think we should maybe start talking fantasy football probably around July sometime.
Okay.
And then we can start talking real football, when the season starts. And then I would love to start diving into personally more draft talks, maybe as soon as December. Or whenever playoffs start happening for the NFL.
And maybe even cover some college football so we can make some names familiar to everybody that's listening, beforehand. That might be interesting too. So, all right.
Yeah. We can touch base kind of as the training camp battles come. I'm really curious how this Packers roster shakes out. So I'm hoping we have
Jordan Love's 65 Hall of Fame speech over here. So.
Oh, Ben.
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. Jordan Love. That's what he said. All right, guys. So, is there anywhere that if anybody's listening that they could reach out to you on social media, Instagram, Facebook, or anything like that? Do you have a handle, Ben, Matt, Corey, anybody?
I got a Packers group on Facebook, Green and Gold Lifers. I probably won't accept you if you're an idiot. So
well, Ben inspired me to start the Black and Gold Crew on private Steeler group on Facebook. So there, and Rooster Dude on Instagram. So that's it.
Very nice. Matt, what about you?
I was going to echo Ben there that Green and Gold Lifers Facebook group is where I've been posting as well. So.
Okay. Well, I might have to join just to follow along with you guys in the off season of before the season. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully I get accepted. And of course, you guys can find me.
We only allow one Steelers fan, so Ryan, I'll let you in.
You let me in.
Right.
Corey's out. Got it. And then we'll switch off every week. Sounds good. You guys, of course, can find me on the Craft Brews and Geek News Facebook page at Facebook, and also at BrewBoy813 on Instagram. This has been the NFL 2020 draft review for both the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's been amazing insight, and I look forward to joining you guys in great conversation very soon. We'll have to figure out a plan, but thank you guys for listening, and thank you for being part of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and end this right now on the recording. Cheers.